The new school year will soon be underway for kids right across the province, and while many students are relieved to be back learning and reconnecting with friends in person, for others, being back in the classroom could be a source of intense anxiety. For more on this, we've reached Janine Hubbard. She is a clinical child psychologist. Good morning, Janine.
Good morning, Martin.
It's been a long time since I've had a chat with you, so it's great to get a chance to reconnect.
I was going to say that the worlds have finally collided in the appropriate way for us. So this is excellent. And this is one of my favorite topics. So delighted to have the chance to chat.
Excellent. Now, I can't think of anybody better to talk to about this. So, let's start at the beginning, I guess. What kind of mental health challenges do kids face when it is back to school time?
Well, I think it's really important for everybody to remember that even good stress is still a form of stress. So that even the kids who are really excited and really looking forward to getting back to things are still experiencing a lot of, intense emotions and intense physiological reactions. But for a lot of kids, school, especially the unknown, especially with transitions, especially, when there are changes for them, can be an extremely stressful period of time.
I'm glad you mentioned that because there is a good stress. And I used to love going back to school. I was really excited. But I would lose sleep, in the days leading up because I was so excited, which would then stress my body, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's actually a good reminder, and why I like talking about it right around now is the time to take a look at our sleep schedules for adults as well. It's time to start looking at the electronic schedules because we want to go in as physically and emotionally healthy as we can. And that really includes things like getting sleep back on track so that first week isn't quite such, a shock to our systems.
What should parents and caregivers be looking out for now in terms of identifying when a child is maybe struggling with anxiety or other mental health-related issues?
First thing is ask what they're worried about them, and sometimes you're often surprised by some of the things that they are worried about. Validate those concerns. I know some of the concerns sound so minuscule. They're like, oh, come on. But validate them and then work with them on some problem-solving skills. Well, as opposed to giving them the answers, help them generate possible answers. Well, what would you do if your best friend isn't in your class on the first day? How would you handle some of those things? Really, what we tend to see is the bad bellies and the headaches and the lack of sleep. If they go on past about the 2-week mark, that's kind of for me where it's it's time to really be, addressing this, not just letting it go. And same thing, especially if you have a child who's had issues in the past around school refusal, make sure the slippery slope doesn't start. Work very closely, reach out to the school, let them know you have concerns. They have amazing staff who are specifically trained on how to deal with these issues. And the more we can push, it feels awful, your child saying, but my tummy's upset. We still need to push with the going to school. And once they're there, having them realize that, okay, maybe this isn't so bad, or maybe there are some safe places in the school. So working really closely with the school team.
You talked there about asking your kids how they're feeling and if they're, feeling any sorts of emotions about back to school. Advice for communicating with a child because sometimes they're often reluctant to open up, especially about feelings.
Well, I was going to say, that's a bigger parenting discussion for sure. But sometimes if you can validate it, even by showing some of your own examples, sometimes it's when I was going to junior high, I was really nervous because I couldn't figure out how to use the combination lock. And I heard all these horror stories about people, not being able to get their books or their coats. And so that was something that I worried about. You can present them with some personal examples of your own, or maybe ones that you've heard of, in particular around junior high, even raising some of the topics. They might not be ready to talk about it yet, but in particular kind of end of elementary, junior high, talking about things like drugs and vaping and opening up that discussion. They may not be ready for it yet, but if you've raised it, it makes it a little bit easier to come back at a later point in time.
Janine, earlier you mentioned something that I think is really important too, is that sometimes what we think of as something really minor to a child is something really, really serious in terms of stressors and things like that. I remember when I was a kid, those pens that used to click down and have 5 different colors in the one pen,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That was the thing. Like, if you didn't have one of those, then that was a problem. And I just remember feeling a lot of stress because we couldn't find them. And it was something as easy as a pen, but it was a stressor, right? So it's
a stressor, and sometimes it's a financial stressor. And I mean, we know that can be a big issue at the moment as well. And so sometimes with parents and kids having a conversation about, well, first of all, no, you do not need an entire new wardrobe day one. But if there are some things that are really important, having that discussion and figuring out, okay, well, you know what, let's see how we can figure out to find you that particular pen or that pencil case or, you know, that particular snack for your lunch, but making it a bit of a sense of priorities. And then the other thing, sometimes we forget that just kids need practice. Maybe it's figuring out what's the route the school bus is going to take. Maybe it's let's go visit the parking lot and see which doors you're probably going to have to go in. The more you can practice and the more your child feels in control of their world and their environment, the less the stress they're going to experience.
All right. Before we say our goodbyes here, some resources maybe for parents or caregivers or young people listening right now that might offer some support.
anxietycanada.ca. It has become my all-time go-to favorite website for all things related to anxiety at all ages. So there's things for kids, things for teens, things for university students, and lots of information for parents.
anxietycanada.ca. Perfect. I'm jotting that down.
Yeah.
There we go.
And like I say, and talk to your school personnel. They're there to help.
And to your kids.
Yes.
Amazing. Janine, always good talking to you. I always love your advice. Thank you very much.
Anytime, Martin. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Janine Hubbard is a clinical child psychologist based in St. John's. Yeah, some really solid advice there. anxietycanada.ca, also a really, really good resource.